like to introduce our next speaker. His name is Trinh, and I had people say, why are we having somebody come and talk about Alzheimer's? I can't remember now. I think that the Bible's pretty clear that we're to treat our body like a temple of the Lord, and that most of us in here, we either know someone who has Alzheimer's, or we've been seen it firsthand, maybe in our family or friends, and sooner or later, if you don't, you will. And to know what's going on with that disease, and really how to react to it and what to do, and where is it? The doctor's in treatment right now. Young is a Barnabas Group member. He got out of medicine a few years ago. He'll probably tell you the story. And he wanted to keep his fingers in it, but he is doing Alzheimer's research at UC Irvine, really on the cutting edge. And so I asked him if he would come and present this. He speaks for the Alzheimer's Association, but he also has a ministry called Tongue Out. I'm sure he's going to tell you about that. He's probably going to get a picture of all of you with your tongue out, so get ready. But great ministry that a lot like Giving University. So Young, come on up and tell us about Alzheimer's.
All right, thanks for the invite here. And so I wear a number of hats. I have an organization called Tongue Out, as he has mentioned, and what we do is we take doctors, nurses, and a lot of high schoolers around the world to do missions work. So this year we were in Dominican Republic in January. We were in Haiti in February. We were in the West Bank in June. We just got back from Vietnam last month, and we're getting ready for Haiti next month. And next month, I think I got about 10 doctors, 10 nurses, 11 or 12 students, and a bunch of volunteers. It's a huge group heading out. But how is this all connected to Alzheimer's? One of our mission in Tongue Out is to reach the least of these in society, the most vulnerable in society. And when we do trips like Vietnam, we would go and look for the blind, and we would offer cataract surgery, which we did last month. We would go to leprosy centers, and we would make sure that every patient with leprosy gets a hug, because nobody else wants to touch them. Even though they're cured from their leprosy, the damage has been done. We would go up to the highlands, we a 6-hour bus drive, and meet the tribal kids who live up there. We recently built a school for them, and with donations from the US here, a little elementary school. And we would do medical clinics, visit orphanages, and basically look for those who are the most vulnerable in society. But the most vulnerable in society aren't necessarily those who are blind, those who are lepers, those who are orphans. In my mind, the most vulnerable society are our own family members and friends and neighbors who have Alzheimer's. Right here in Orange County. Alzheimer's is the 3rd leading cause of death in Orange County. Did you know that? Cause number 1, the most leading cause of death is heart attacks. Number 2 is cancer. Number 3 is Alzheimer's in Orange County. Most folks don't realize that, but when you look at death certificates, it is the 3rd highest reason on a death certificate. It's Alzheimer's. It is an epidemic. It is the one condition in the top 10 leading cause of death that we have zero control over right now. When we make a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, as a physician, in our mind, it is a one-way direction, isn't it? And after 17 years of clinical practice, doing internal medicine and geriatrics, I was successful in bringing down the cause of death and in heart attacks. I was successful in helping to lower the risk for cancers, sending folks for mammograms and colonoscopies and treating their diabetes successfully. The one condition I had no success over was Alzheimer's. And for that reason, I kind of left clinical practice last year to do missions work. And when I'm not out of the country, this is what I'm doing. Basically, I'm a public speaker. I speak several times a week to the Hospital Christian Fellowship last week, and to churches, to different organizations. And my role simply is to go out there and bring awareness of the need to detect this early, to bring awareness on the things that we can do to minimize our risk for Alzheimer's. And there's a lot of things that can be done to minimize our risk. And to give folks an update on where we're at on finding a cure. We have a team of 15 physicians, psychiatrists, psychologists, purely doing Alzheimer's research with Irvine Clinical Research, and we're inside the Alzheimer's building. I don't know if you guys ever see that building going down the 405, right across from the freeway, close by here actually. There's an Alzheimer's building. I'm inside there. But anyway, Jim asked me to see if I can tell you the cure tonight in 15 minutes, is that right? And but real quick, when I go do my talks, this is what I talk about. And I talk at churches, I talk at organizations, and I would be glad to speak to your organization as well. We speak about the plaque. Have you guys heard about the plaque that builds up in the brain? Anyone know the name of that? Heard of amyloid, right? Amyloid plaque. We talk about the plaque. We talk about what causes the plaque. How do we detect the plaque? What can we do to minimize our risk of getting the plaque? And if the plaque is in there, how do we remove it? We have an answer for all that, actually. And I think a few years down the line, we have hope. We have hope. Real quickly, our brains, each brain has about 100 billion brain cells. A lot of brain cells. And in our brain, every time I have a thought, the brain cells would talk. Every time I have a feeling, the brain cells will talk to one another. Every memory that I have, the brain cells will talk. Our brain cells, each memory is a pattern of connection in the brain, in this 100 billion brain cells. So my memory of dinner last night was this pattern here. My memory of lunch is this pattern here. My memory of you guys right now is this pattern here. That's in a healthy brain. What happens in Alzheimer's is that the plaque that builds up, it physically gets in the way and it blocks the communication between two brain cells. So the brain cells can't talk to one another anymore. And when enough of this happens in the brain, and the brain cells can no longer communicate, that's when memory starts to break down. That's when we begin to forget. Every patient with Alzheimer's have this plaque in the brain, 100%. The scary thing is, we have learned that this plaque, before your first symptom of Alzheimer's, before your first symptom of memory loss, this plaque has already been building up for about 15 to 20 years. So we have learned that Alzheimer actually starts 20 years early. 20 years early before symptoms start. And the most common question I get is, what causes the plaque, or how do I detect the plaque? I mean, what do we do to look for this plaque? How do you find it? Is it a blood test? Is it something? If you were to ask me this question, maybe just a few years ago, what can we do to detect the plaque? The only answer I had for you at that time was autopsy. And so it just wasn't a good prevention program back then. You know, we tried to implement a prevention program, but it just didn't work. The good news is, over the last 5 years or so, we now have an FDA-approved brain scan. Have you heard of PET scans? When we hear about PET scans, we think of cancer evaluation, cancer surveillance, right? So we now have a PET scan where we inject a medication that medication goes up to the brain and looks for the plaque. If the plaque is there, it tags it and it lights it up. We can now see the Alzheimer's plaque. And not only can we see the plaque, we can see it years before you have symptoms, because it takes 15 to 20 years to build up. Imagine what we can do now by catching this plaque early, right? That's what we're doing right in Irvine. That's what we're doing in my office. That's the good news. The bad news is insurance doesn't quite pay for it. What's new, right? It's probably because the scan's about $5,000. It's pretty pricey. And Medicare doesn't typically pay for it. So that's the bad news. It's available, just nobody covers it. The good news is, if you're a candidate for one of the programs that is available in my office, you get the scan for free. There's no cost. I scan patients every day looking for this plaque. The question is, what can we do if the plaque's there, right? Finding it is one thing. What can you do about it? And what can you do to minimize your risk for the plaque? There's a lot of things that can be done, actually, to minimize our risk for the plaque. And it all starts with learning why the plaque is there and what causes these plaques. That's like an hour lecture, right? I'll give you some highlights. There are probably over 30 different factors or associations that causes plaque production, which is quite a bit. And it's one of the reasons why this is an epidemic, because if you got 30 things going at you, what are you going to try to stop first, right? But I can categorize those 30 different factors into maybe 3 different buckets. I call it the 3 buckets of Alzheimer's causes or association. The first bucket is the circulation bucket. Anything that causes poor circulation in your body will increase your risk for Alzheimer's. And I say that because if I took 10 patients with Alzheimer's, 8 of them have high blood pressure. That's a circulation problem. If I took 10 patients with Alzheimer's, 4 of them have diabetes. That's a circulation problem. Diabetics do not die from high blood sugar. Diabetics die from heart attacks and strokes. That's the end result. Circulation problem. If I took 10 patients with Alzheimer's, 2 or 3 will have heart disease, and many will have high cholesterol. So we have learned that the same risk factors for heart disease are the same risk factors for Alzheimer's. Isn't that interesting? That's bucket number 1. Bucket number 2 is the inflammation bucket. The inflammation bucket. Inflammation is a disease that goes along and underlies all other chronic conditions these days. What I mean by that is, you know, when you have a fever, when you get sick, that's simply inflammation. The inflammation is when the immune system tries to protect itself from something foreign like a bacteria, a virus, or a toxin. Right? Inflammation occurs in every organ system of our body. We give it different names. For example, the lungs, right? Inflammation of the lungs. Asthma. Asthma is simply inflammation of your lungs. When your immune system doesn't like what it's exposed to, and it creates mucus, inflammation, so you start to wheeze, right? That's simply inflammation. Inflammation of the GI tract. Have you guys ever heard of like ulcerative colitis? Have you heard of Crohn's disease? Right? That's simply inflammation of the GI tract. I just gave it a different name. I gave it a different diagnosis. Same underlying disorder. Inflammation of the skin. That's simply eczema, psoriasis, dermatitis. Do you see the underlying core causes of all these conditions? right? Inflammation of the joints is pretty obvious, right? Or joint pains, or joint aches. What do you call inflammation of the brain? Anyone know? Encephalitis? Okay, that's an infection, yes, of the brain. Yeah, inflammation of the brain, I call it Alzheimer's. Same underlying core cause, I just gave it a different name, didn't I? And we know this because when we do autopsies of our patients with Alzheimer's, not only do we see the plaque, that plaque is surrounded by inflammatory cells throughout the whole brain. And so we think about these conditions, arthritis, colitis, and things of that sort. But what we don't realize is that we expose ourselves to inflammation on a daily basis. It is called our food. Have you heard of pro-inflammatory foods? Everyone's heard of anti-inflammatory foods, right? If you heard of anti-inflammatory foods, that just means that there are pro-inflammatory foods, right? If you see me in the office, I have a whole list for you. Stuff to avoid, right? And one of that is sugar, actually. Sugar is a toxin to the brain, which is why diabetics have double the risk. Right? This is a bad lecture after dinner. Bad lecture after dinner. Wrong lecture, wrong topic, right? You spit your cake out. Good job. Spit his cake out. Okay? So that's bucket number 2, right? That's bucket number 2. Bucket number 3. Bucket number 3 is called the toxin bucket. Toxicity, stuff that we are exposed to on a regular basis. Just a few years ago, actually not that long ago, 2 years, there's a study showing that those who live in areas of high pollution have a higher risk of Alzheimer's than those who live in areas of low pollution. Toxicity, right? Except the toxins are coming from the air that we breathe in. But toxins don't come from just the air, does it? Where else can we get toxicity? Right? From our food, right? How many of you guys are like me where you enjoy a medium rare steak? That's it? What's wrong with this group? That's pretty good. So if you enjoy a medium rare steak, like I do, are you just eating a medium rare steak? What else are we eating? I heard the word hormones. That's right. We pump our cows up with hormones to make them nice, plump, fat, and profitable, right? So when I'm eating that medium rare steak, I'm not just eating a medium rare steak, I'm eating hormones. What else do we give our cows? Yes, steroids, antibiotics. If I'm eating that medium rare steak, we pump our cows up with antibiotics all the time because who wants a cow who dies young? Right? So throughout their lifetime, we make sure that they don't get infections and die. We pump them up with antibiotics. So when I'm eating that medium rare steak, I'm eating hormones, eating antibiotics, I'm eating, the grass that the cow ate. And how do you know that the grass the cow ate was not sprayed by pesticides? Do you know? Is it on the label? Right? They won't tell you if it's on the label. So now I'm eating that medium rare steak, and it's antibiotics, hormones, pesticides, and all that stuff gets into my system. And when the immune system sees it, what's the immune system's first response when it sees a bad guy? Inflammation. Inflammation. So chronic inflammation we see and we eat every day without realizing, right? And inflammation is connected to up here. The buckets, the causes of Alzheimer's, stuff that we are exposed to on a daily basis. It is why it's the third leading cause of death. We actually eat ourselves to our diagnosis. Did you know that? Pretty scary, isn't it? Now, so this lecture I give is usually about an hour, hour and a half. And I have, I guess you can go to our website. It's the healthybrainclub.com, where you can get some information in addition to that. I got some videos on there teaching some of these stuff. But really, the question is, if that plaque is there, what can we do about it? Have you heard of the word immunotherapy? Some have, some have not. Immunotherapy is currently being done typically in cancer treatment, where we train the immune system. We train your own immune system to recognize the cancer cell as the bad guy. And so rather than chemotherapy that beats up everything, right? The good guys, the bad guys. With immunotherapy, your immune system goes directly for the cancer cell and eats it up. We are having a lot of success with immunotherapy in cancer treatment. Conditions like leukemias, lymphomas, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, metastatic melanoma, certain types of breast cancers and lung cancers are all responding to immunotherapy. So I have a good number of stage 4 breast cancer patients, metastatic to the bone, who are still alive after 5 years from immunotherapy. Lots of progress, yeah. So, what we are doing in Alzheimer's is we are bringing immunotherapy over to Alzheimer's. We are training the immune system to recognize this plaque as the bad guy. That's what we're doing right in our office, about 10 minutes away from here. So that if I scan your brain, if you're a candidate or a family member or whoever, right? If I scan your brain and I see the plaque, we're offering immunotherapy. Do you want to see what the results are looking like? All right. Here's, when was this published? It says June 5th, 2018. No, July. That was a month or two ago, right? This is July. Forbes magazine, Alzheimer's drug success, reversing earlier results. Earlier results meaning reversing the plaque. Reversing the plaque. So this was just 2 months ago. New York Times, this is pretty recent, within the last 2 months. New Alzheimer's drug slows memory loss. And that's a picture of the plaque, by the way. Alzheimer's news today. This Alzheimer's therapy, elenbecestat, reduces brain amyloid level, is safe and well tolerated. This was, I think, in June as well, about 2 months ago. By the way, this medication's in my office. So there is an epidemic and there's hope. There is hope. By the way, how many of you guys know there's an Alzheimer's gene? 1 out of 4 of us have it. 1 out of 4 of us have it. That is the current statistics. If you're interested in checking out if you have the gene, give me a call. We do it for no cost. It's a little swab of your cheek where we take some saliva and DNA. We'll get your results in 2 hours. Pretty crazy, isn't it? We'll get your results in 2 hours. And we do that for a reason. Because if you have the gene, your risk of Alzheimer's is about 40%. Kind of scary. If you have 1 copy of the gene from 1 parent, that risk is 40%. If you have 2 copies of the gene from both parents, your risk is 80%. And I checked the gene for a simple reason. For those who have the gene, I'll send you to get a brain scan at no cost to see if the plaque's there. Because you can have the gene and not have the plaque, right? Which is a good thing. But if we see the plaque, we're going to offer you immunotherapy because we want to stop the damage before it starts. We want to prevent this while you're still talking to me, right? That's our goal. This is happening now. This is happening today. I've been swabbing people every day. Swab, 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 swab. By the way, do you know how I got introduced to the Barnabas group? I was in the middle of examining my patient, and he's like, "Have you heard of the Barnabas group?" Yeah, and I haven't. It could have been a prostate exam at the time, you know. But that's how I got to the Barnabas group. Yeah, probably in the middle of a prostate exam. And so he was like, "Why don't you show up?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'll show up." And I showed up, and I've never seen him here since. I've never seen him here. And I became a member of the Barnabas group, and I from there was introduced to Jerry Husan, who presented and went to Vietnam. And so I joined him to Vietnam back in 2013. And from there, I launched Tongue Out. And it was all because of the Barnabas group. It's pretty crazy how God works, isn't it? Yeah, very crazy. So next steps. There's a few next steps if you're interested. Let me see. You don't have a blue half sheet because I normally give that out in my lectures. But you can come and see me for a free consultation. Everything I do, there's no cost to it. It's just part of my ministry. Okay? And to do that, it's really simple. healthybrainclub.com. And then I think there's a contact email or phone number in there. You can just call us and schedule a free appointment to see me. If you're interested in getting a swab to see if you have the gene, do that. If you're interested in seeing your candidate for the brain scan, if you are, we'll send you to get that brain scan, because our mission and our goal is to stop Alzheimer's. It's huge. We all know somebody who's affected, don't we? And so basically that is what we do. If you want me to come to speak to your church, your organization, your clubs that you're in, contact me. I'm a fellow Barnabas member. You can shoot me an email. I think I got my cell phone number in one of those pages where it says Tongue Out. The Tongue Out page, I think on page 31, has my cell number. Now, if you call me, I probably won't pick up, but if you text me, I'll respond, okay? And I will be glad to come and speak to your organization about Alzheimer's prevention. And I spent about an hour and a half, and we will go through the details of minimizing your risk for Alzheimer's, lifestyle things that you can do. And that's just our mission at home, other than the out-of-state missions. Thank you so much.
I have to tell you, if you don't know this, Dr. Trin's nickname is Iggy, okay? Iggy. I'll be by to see you tomorrow about 10 a.m.
Which exam, the prostate?
Not the prostate exam. That wasn't me, I can tell you. No. I did go to Vietnam with Iggy in 2013, and I actually will be going back to Vietnam with him on a mission trip this next summer. So if you're interested in going, sign up and let him know that too. There's 2 feedback forms. One is on page 29, the other is on page 31. 29 is the information if you wanted about Alzheimer's, and you could write that down, put your name, email address, phone number, whatever you want to do, ask him those questions, drop it in the box out there. Or if you were interested in Tongue Out and going to Vietnam with us, or one of the other mission trips he does, or learning more about that ministry as well, fill that out same way, name, email address, phone number, drop that in the same box, and he'll sort them out and he'll get in touch with you. And when he talks about texting, Susie and I text him from all over the world, and he answers right away. So, great. Let's go ahead and pray for Dr. Trin. Father, we just come before you. We thank you so much that you've given wisdom and intelligence and a heart to people like Dr. Trin, who want to serve you, not just to make a lot of money, but Lord, but to be able to see us live healthy lives so that we can serve you as well. And the disease of Alzheimer's just is incredibly horrible, and if we've ever been around it, we know and we understand it, Lord. So we just thank you for what we've been able to hear tonight. We hope that we're able to use it so that we may better serve you, or we may help other people better serve you in years to come. And we just thank you for that. We just lift that up to you in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, Iggy.